Welcome to How We Hope, a show where two friends grapple with an aspect of hope to try and become more hopeful ourselves. I'm Betsy.
And I'm Lena.
I could use a whole lot of words to describe what it feels like to live in the US right now, but one word that rises to the top is grief. It feels like a time when a lot of people are grieving.
Can you say more?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Um, when it comes to the US, I really have never considered myself a patriotic person, but I did grow up getting a lot of the American dream, American exceptionalism narrative. And I think it's because immigrant kids get more of it. It's the sort of ideology that our parents subscribe to a lot of the time because they've made so many sacrifices to be here and to raise us here that it has to be worth it. But lately, it's been hard to square that very rosy, lovely story with the images of immigrant kids being pulled out of their beds and zip tied by men in uniform. You're like, wow, is that the American dream? I'm not quite sure that's what it was supposed to look like.
Hmm. Yeah, I can totally relate to the feeling that you're growing up in the shadow of the American dream, and you, as your parents' children, are meant to be the bastion of success in America. They have come across the ocean to have a better life for the future generations. Something interesting that I've seen in the time that I've grown up is that when my parents first immigrated to the US, there was a lot of clout in China, where they're from. When you come to the US, people really look up to you for it. That is no longer true. I think a lot of people in China are less convinced about the value of moving to the US. A lot of times their lives are better if they just stayed in China. So it has also been interesting to see that image of American exceptionalism crumble internationally as well. Immigrants aren't the only people losing faith in the idea of America these days. A Pew Research report from 2024 called What Happens When Trust Is Gone shows that Americans' trust is declining in most historically well-regarded institutions. That includes the government, the courts, news sources, and educational institutions.
Yep, chances are, if there exists a group of people who are working on some sort of mission together in some sort of official capacity, and they've been doing it for, say, 5 or more decades, Americans don't really like them right now. Not a lot of institutions that underpin American society have the clout or the street cred that they once did. Lena, I'm wondering if you think that Americans widely mistrusting institutions is necessarily a bad thing.
I think it's definitely bad for my mental.
You did major in public policy, so it would be very odd if you said, yeah, it's great that no one trusts government right now.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately still a believer in policy. I think it is maybe too broad of a claim to say that it's outright a bad thing. I think it's totally possible that someone mistrusts the government for really rational reasons. And then, in their perspective, when other people don't trust the government, it's less effective, it gets fewer things done. And that is a win because government becomes smaller and less influential.
I guess that's
Um,
how libertarians think,
yeah,
maybe. Shout
I
out
think
to
so.
libertarians.
I mean, personally, I obviously think it feels bad that the institutions I've spent so much of my life in are no longer trusted. And I think it's bad that there isn't a thing that everyone believes is worth trusting.
Yeah, yeah, not to sound like a summer camp counselor, but then how do you work together? The theme of this week's episode is when it feels like things around us are falling apart, what do we do? We are exploring the decline of faith in institutions through churches and people's evolving relationships with them. I interviewed two people this week to grapple with the idea of faith in crisis. Both of them speak to these broader societal schisms that we have been chatting about. The first person I interviewed was Dan Horn, a Pulitzer Prize winning investigative reporter who's been at the Cincinnati Enquirer for over 25 years. One of the topics that he covers as a journalist is religion. He's seen both the city of Cincinnati and its various religious institutions go through a lot of upheaval over the past couple of decades. Can you tell me how you first started covering religion in Cincinnati?
I started when I was still covering courts in the early aughts during the clergy abuse scandal that popped up in 2002 after the Boston Globe spotlight scandal, and then all these other cases emerged everywhere, including in Cincinnati. I was covering courts, so a lot of these cases were raising legal issues, and my editor said, "Hey, can you just kind of take this for 6 months as part of your job?" But it evolved into more than that. What started with just covering the clergy abuse stuff from a legal standpoint became more of a beat that involved other faiths and more about religious institutions and that kind of thing than just the clergy abuse.
It's kind of an extreme question, but was there ever any fear that this would be something that ended the church just because there were so many abuse cases? What was it like to cover the institution in crisis, is my question.
I never felt like the church itself was in danger of ceasing to be. It had existed for 2,000 years plus, and so I don't think I ever felt that this was the thing that was going to do it in. But I think to your point about faith and institutions generally, when you have a crisis like this, it does shake people's faith in the people who are running the institution, even if they still believe in God, even if they still believe in the Catholic teachings. And how does that
Mhm.
manifest itself? Do people stop going to church? Some did. Did people stop giving money? Some did that. Donations did go down. Church attendance had been going down anyway, and that took a hit. Some of the research suggests that church attendance continues to struggle and not bounce back since COVID. The issues kind of run deeper. Faith in a secular society, there are a lot of challenges to that. But also, I think there's a belief among a lot of Catholic leaders that this is cyclical. They've gone through periods in the past that have been challenging. There is a concerted effort to bring Catholics back to what they consider the mother church. I think they think it's cyclical and that if they just keep working hard enough, they'll win people back.
As it turns out, institutions that have been around for thousands of years are stubbornly resilient. The Catholic Church's sex abuse scandal exposed cases of priests abusing children around the world. I would imagine that for an institution with the brand of capital H holy, being exposed as harboring pedophiles would endanger its ability to move forward. But as we know today, the Catholic Church is alive and well.
It makes me wonder if it has to do with the fact that we tend to associate things with individual people rather than institutions. There's this concept in psychology called the fundamental attribution error, which is where we tend to attribute outcomes because of individual traits rather than systems. So if someone trips, we have a tendency to be like, oh, that person is clumsy, and not, oh, the sidewalk there was uneven.
Mhm.
So I guess in that way, it's not entirely surprising to me that people see these scandals happening and are like, those priests are terrible. It's terrible that happened in that church, but that is not my Catholic church. It's an easier thing to grapple with than let's question this entire belief system that I have been a part of my whole life.
Yeah, I have to say, having been raised in the church, it also does not teach critical thinking about systems or systemic change. The scandal did cause a lot of Catholics to change or even end their relationship with the Catholic Church, but the institution itself survived. We see those changes on a smaller scale all the time with individual churches as well. I talked to Dan about one of his stories from 2020 when he reported on what happened after a new pastor arrived at St. Anthony's Church in a Cincinnati neighborhood known as Madisonville. Can you talk about the tension that resulted when this new pastor arrived between him and some of the parishioners? What did that church represent before and then after his arrival?
Yeah, parish politics has always been something that people argue about, debate about, complain about within individual parishes because the pastor is the leader of the parish. And so if there are disagreements about his approach to anything, from sports teams to the school curriculum to the way he handles the mass schedule, it can lead to all kinds of tension. And so anytime you have a new pastor, there's some anxiety. And in this case, St. Anthony's, you have a very diverse parish. And They had been given a lot of leeway to practice their faith. For the most part, I think there was an understanding that they were Catholic. Everyone there considered himself Catholic. You still recognize the Mass. But I think conservatives felt they were getting a little loosey-goosey with some of the rules. So this new parish priest comes in and he starts changing things. He says, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to do that anymore. He removed some people who were on the parish council, which is an advisory council to the pastor. A group of parishioners, I believe they purchased an ad publishing an open letter to the archdiocese, airing their grievances that way. There was this kind of split in the parish. I don't know where things stand now, but at that time there had been dozens of people who left. They just went to other churches.
So, one of the unpopular decisions this new pastor made was getting rid of the African themed altar cloth and replacing it with one that looked like the altar cloths used in other Catholic churches. He also reversed other decisions that were the result of input from the church community.
Some of the music was non-traditional. Some of it was a nod to the African ancestry of some of their parishioners. So race became a part of this for some people. They felt that they had been allowed to shape the church a little bit, and now that was being taken away.
The fact that that church just has continued to exist shows that it takes a lot for an institution to fall apart, but the bar for individuals changing their relationship to that institution is a lot lower. One example might be realizing that the electoral process in the US is not representative, but rather than that resulting in the institution falling apart, what's more likely is that we just stop believing in it.
Right.
And so the onus kind of falls to us to grapple with our own relationship to institutions rather than spending a lot of time thinking about how an institution is falling apart.
Yeah, my tendency is to do the latter. So this is a very constructive lesson for me to learn. One thing that I asked Dan about was the institution of the church. I was interested to know about the parallels between covering the Catholic Church as a reporter and covering the federal government. Does, as a reporter, the way you cover, say, the federal government or county feel really different from the way that you cover the Catholic Church?
It's interesting because I would say a big part of the answer is no. It's a bureaucracy and it has people who are keeping the lights on and keeping stuff running. They have a human resources department. They hire people, they fire people, they have schools. There's physical buildings to maintain and there's people to pay and hire. Not just the Catholic Church. Every institution, secular or religious, has some level of bureaucracy, all of them. Probably growing up in any faith, you see like, oh, it's the priest, the rabbi, the imam. It's like they're above it all, but they're all part of the politics that go on in any faith community. These guys are guys. They have ambition, they have fears, they have doubts. They're all people doing jobs, whether it's City Hall, keeping the streets clear in a snowstorm, or whether it's at the archdiocese, making sure that the lights stay turned on at the churches. So, yeah, there are a lot of similarities between secular and religious institutions in terms of the way they run.
It's funny, you don't think of the church as an employer or a multinational business. But maybe part of the staying power of these institutions, like the church, is the economic incentives that exist to keep them alive. They represent jobs, they represent enormous administrations that run schools and are part of people's daily routines. There's just a lot of systems that are already in place to keep them going.
Spoken like a true econ major. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a lot of paperwork. There are probably so many documents that have been filed to make sure the church survives. I also really liked Dan's point that institutions are made up of people. The fact that every person's relationship with their institution is different is something that journalists get a lot of mileage out of. In a political climate where people are unwilling to speak, I'm often betting on being able to forge my own relationship with that person who is a part of that larger entity. That's a really tough nut to crack. The next person I talked to is my dear friend, Esther Holliday, who I've known for over a decade. Esther was raised in the Independent Baptist Church, also known as IBC, which is a fundamentalist branch of Christianity. This is her talking about her upbringing right outside of Savannah, Georgia.
My family and I were part of what's called the Independent Baptist Church, IBC, and I was in several flavors of that from a very young age all the way into actually undergrad. Church was basically the only community that I had outside of my siblings and maybe a few friends in the neighborhood because we were homeschooled. So
Mm.
that was pretty much our social life: church, music classes at the university, and then being homeschooled at home. Sunday was all church. Then it was Wednesday night Bible study, Thursday night family devotions, and then Saturday was some kind of church event. So it was comforting because it was familiar. It was where everyone was together for each other. I became the kid who woke up in the mornings and would read on my own the Bible every day. I would read about it during family devotions. It really did come from the heart for me.
Yeah.
Like genuinely, I had an incredibly close relationship with God. That was all of my childhood.
Esther's belief in God and relationship with IBC carried through her college years.
So when we started undergrad, I was so geared to be that Christian, to shine my light. We were homeschooled, and this is the first time going to a public school. So most of them were not Christians, and we were the few lights.
The salt of the earth.
Salt of the earth.
Yep.
And a pinch of we are better than everyone and the truth.
Of course. Yep. The self-righteousness.
Oh, I still cringe thinking about that. So we had attended another IBC church, my sister and I. We went every Sunday, nearly every Wednesday, even though we were working and doing classes. I don't know how we did that.
Did you take other people as well, or was it just you two?
Well, we tried to.
You tried to recruit, huh?
People would come and were like, wow, this is crazy stuff. Are you girls okay? Oh, Betsy, my senior year of college, by then we were now having closer, more honest relationships with our peers. And they finally told us that our first year we were called the Holy Sister. I think it's surprising for people when they hear me talk about my relationship with God when I was younger, because it just felt very wholesome and sweet. The other side of it was fear. I was constantly afraid that I would go to hell. So IBC has a process of salvation that is very a moment in time and a specific script of a prayer. So you say, oh man, let's see if I can remember this. Dear Lord Jesus, I am a sinner. I know that you love me. You came on the cross to die for me, and I want you to come into my heart and save me. I did that when I was 5 after family devotions. And from then on, until I left the church, I was so fearful I said the wrong thing. I often doubted that I, in fact, was going to go to heaven. So I would repeat it to myself at night.
It is hard for me to imagine how wrapped up in every part of her identity religion was. It sounds like she was homeschooled, and probably the only social interaction that she got growing up was tied to religion.
Yeah, I grew up in a small city in central Michigan, and the expectation, which was very close to reality, was that everyone attended church. It was just unremarkable because it was what everyone did. So, yeah, religion is really part of the social fabric in many different parts of the country. And when you're raised in it, you're not aware that other people don't live in that reality. Even though Esther strongly identified with the church and with Christianity from a young age, there came a point when she really started to have doubts. Eventually, after over 2 decades of being a devout Christian, Esther made the choice to leave the church. This is her talking about how she got there.
I read the book Scarlet Letter. That completely shifted my mindset. I read that book after I'd observed a young girl come to our church. She, I think, was 8 months pregnant, and she was maybe 15. The image that is just seared in my brain is all the young girls in the church were on one side of the gymnasium. She was alone by herself on the other, no chair in sight, and we were just whispering to each other. And then I read Scarlet Letter, and I was like, well, we're no better. We can't see past our own judgment. After that, my brother came out as gay senior year of college. That was it. I don't know. It was a very simple choice. I was very Christian. I was like, it's my brother. I couldn't choose God over my brother. Growing up, I'd always hear people say, oh, look at the black sheep, the rebellious person who left the church. My experience was I was trying so hard to stay in the church and be a Christian. It felt like I wasn't choosing it. It was just the world was revealing this truth to me I could no longer ignore. I had two friends come out to me,
Yeah.
undergrad, before my brother came out as gay. And I was so confused. All these things I was taught were slowly breaking apart.
Did you feel like you grieved after leaving?
Oh, it was huge. It was very hard. I felt like I lost a best friend. I talked before about having this person I could just always talk to. I lost that. And that was 80% of my brain. It felt like I was on an island. My brain was on an island and it was empty and desolate.
This whole episode is about what happens after you lose faith in something big like religion or the government. I'm interested to know if the faith that you had in the church, in God, has become replaced by faith in something else.
Oh, I don't know if it's replaced in the way like some people replace it with yoga, like something very, which I'm all
That's
for.
what I did.
I can't pinpoint it on one word or one framework. To me, it's fragmented. Moving away from the church has unlocked an ability for me to have really honest dialogue, like really looking at myself, the good and the bad, the ugly. That's filled my spiritual side, just having beautiful, open, truthful conversations where neither of the people that I'm talking with are judging each other. Doubt is a seed that maybe you don't believe, is what we were taught. And therefore, I was so quick to move past the doubt. My thinking process and logic was very binary, this or that, yes, no, black and white. Moving away from that has been so freeing. I went to philosophers, all these resources online, scientific route. I went through so many different things. The internet's a wild place. Now it, I guess, goes back full circle, just hearing people's stories. That's where I've landed, just hearing the human story.
I was really looking for an easy, simple answer to that question. Esther's response is more complex and candid, which I do appreciate. I'm wondering if, Lena, you have any takeaways after hearing her story?
Yeah, I really appreciated Esther's vulnerability and talking about how she decided to leave the church. I think what she was saying about how it's like grieving a friend makes a lot of sense. And maybe you can fill it with some honest dialogue and conversations, but you can't really fill that hole of losing this big belief that you once had.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we bring this back to how we started this episode with talking about the American dream, I think there's a lot to learn from what Esther said about how we can't replace it with another belief. And the goal also isn't to like take down the American dream. That mythology will probably always be there in some sort of form. That's something that we learned, is that these ideas are really persistent. Instead, the only thing we can do is to have real dialogue about what it means to be an immigrant in the US now, and to really critically think about what we gain and lose from moving to the US, which is maybe less hopeful than believing in the American dream, or less hopeful than feeling like maybe you can make that dream true again. But it is something real, and we get something real from it.
Yeah, I might disagree with you a little bit. I think maybe it is time to take down the American dream. It's just so tired, and I think we need something new. Actively reflecting on what we can replace it with. So I guess I'm disagreeing with you entirely.
I just feel like the whole idea of manifest destiny has been around. It's part of the fabric of the country, and you're never gonna fully eliminate American exceptionalism.
Wait, manifest destiny, isn't that, oh, God chose a certain ruler or a certain colonizer? What did that mean again?
It was all those people who were like, it's Americans' role to explore the West and make it to the Pacific coast.
I see. That's definitely how they talked back then.
When we started this episode, we set out to ask when it feels like things around us, like institutions or beliefs, are falling apart. What do we do? Do you have a response to that?
I do. I think the first thing to keep in mind is that, again, because of the immense amount of paperwork and the bureaucracies that uphold these institutions, you as an individual most likely cannot influence whether an institution lives or dies. So I really think that helps take off the pressure. But reevaluating what these institutions or mythologies mean, what they do for us in the current day, does open the door to something new.
Some of the stuff we just talked about in terms of social media and divisions in politics and society, the faith institutions are navigating the same thing. Where is their place in all of this, and what do they offer? Whether it's a traditionalist, you can count on us, we're not changing, that's kind of the point, or whether it's we're evolving and we're welcoming, whatever. I don't know, but they're figuring it out. These are institutions filled with people. They want to stay relevant. They believe in their faith, and the institutions are the way they get that faith to a broader audience. So it's crucial that they do figure it out. Their survival depends on it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of How We Hope, a show distributed by Grab Bag Collab. How did this episode make you feel? We would love to hear your thoughts in our inbox, howwehopepodcast@gmail.com.